Jay Metcalf, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Sean?
I'm doing well. How's your family?
Family is great. Yesterday was my daughter's 5th birthday, so we had a great day. And I'm here in France, so we've been able to kind of return to normal life. So we can have birthday parties and stuff like that without any worries. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'm looking forward to, I'm in the States, I'm in Ohio. Now, Ohio was not hit nearly as hard as other places in the country, and I think the governor of Ohio did a good job of kind of quickly jumping right in and then setting up a plan, and then the plan, it has like, I don't know, 5 stages or something, and when something seemed like it was digressing, they said, okay, well, we were in stage 3, we're going back to stage 2 again, so there's been a little bit of that, but it's been all right, and my family's doing fine. You said that your daughter turned 5. My son is 6.
Okay,
so
cool.
And he's got a birthday next month, so he'll be 7, and so it's great times.
Yeah, well, I hope you'll be able to have a party. Like some of my daughter's friends, they had their birthday in April, whatever. And there was no party, there was no seeing their friends. So they kind of missed out on that.
Well, we're gonna do a drive-through birthday party. So like people will be in their cars and they'll say, hey, whatever. They'll drive by and say, hey. We actually saw that, I don't know, maybe a month ago, someone else, another kid in the neighborhood or something had a birthday party that did it like that. And we're like, well, just to be safe, I think we'll do the same thing.
Yeah. Cool.
But, but it's cool. He's just happy to, he's still bouncing off the walls and having a great time. So it's all right.
Yeah, but I guess there hasn't been school over there, and there hasn't been activities, with other kids, or what?
Yeah, there's a lot of nebulous stuff. So, yeah, so my son, we have him in a private school, and the public school, so for Columbus public schools, the way that they have it set up right now, at least the way they're talking, is kids are only going to go to school like 2 days a week, and then they'll be home for 3 days. And that's if the numbers sort of continue the way that they are now. If they start going back up or something, then it's possible that it will be all virtual. Now, I'm paying tuition for my son to go to school. It's private school, so if we're only doing two days of him actually being in class, I'm hoping that there's going to be some kind of discount.
Yeah. Well, you're just talking about in September. Because
yeah,
here my daughter was back in school in May.
Oh, yeah,
and she was in school in May, and all through June, school ended. First week of July or something, and since then she goes to like day camp, which is basically at the school where all the kids are there and they just play all day. But we've been back to that, and so everyone else can go back to their normal jobs and work, and I think there's definitely. And one thing, I read the news in the States a lot, and that's something I don't see people like talking about, is that the fact that all these other countries have managed to be back to somewhat normal for the last couple of months. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I don't know what the news is there, but I think that's something that people should be aware of in the States.
Well, that, and, you speak of, you're talking about the news and reading the news and stuff. One thing that I've been really dissatisfied with is just the lack of concern or even commentary or, you know, anything about the plight of musicians, artists, and service workers. You know, it's like there's like seems to be no mention or very little. I mean, I've heard no mention of like freelance musicians, how this whole thing is like jammed, you know, people up. In some cases cause people to, you know, change careers, you know, because you got to do something. You got to do something to make money. We've seen a lot of, obviously a lot of musicians try to be more assertive about the online, you know, online education and, you know, teaching lessons online and then just creating content, trying to, you know, keep things going, like multicam videos and all that kind of stuff. Cause you know, you gotta, even if it's not profitable, you got to keep yourself moving. You got to keep, you know, the blood flowing, so to speak. You know, we've heard a lot of this discussion or conversation or these phrases like, you know, essential workers and things. And, you know, in my mind, creativity is always essential. So trying to keep things moving. Now, the online thing, for you, this has been what you've been doing. It seems like maybe the primary thing that you've been doing over the last how many years?
Well, it's been, you know, I don't keep track of dates too well, but I've been doing the online thing full time for maybe going on three years now, although I might not be counting right. I used to do a lot of gigs, you know, a lot of freelance musician work. When I lived in New York, I did the freelance musician work, but I also had to do a lot of teaching. I love teaching, but it was a necessary part of survival and, you know, making ends meet. In France, I was able to just work playing music, which is a luxury, I know. Where I live, there's a lot of work just because there's a lot of events and a lot of things happening. And the work is enjoyable because a lot of outdoor stuff. There's beautiful weather all year. And it's very fun and international with lots of different styles of music, lots of things happening. I was very lucky to be able to just make a good living playing music. Now, earlier you mentioned something about nobody's talking about freelance musicians and their plight in this situation. Now, when I lived in New York and was working as a freelance musician, even there was no pandemic happening, but nobody seems very concerned about musicians or creative people, not just musicians, dancers, artists, or, you know, people that contribute to the culture of their city, of their country, of whatever, completely forgotten. You know, in a place like New York, which I think got built up, the reputation, one of the reasons, you know, I've lived in different countries, and when I tell people I'm from New York, one thing they almost inevitably always tell me is, oh, it's my dream to live in New York, to be in New York, to visit New York. Why would you have left? Why would you ever leave New York? People ask me all the time. And, you know, one of the reasons people dream of New York is because of the culture that has come out of it. This is why people around the world dream of this place. It's all the musical culture, artistic culture, whatever. Now it seems, in recent times, it seems like that city has forsaken culture, and the priority is, you know, Wall Street. How much money are you bringing into the city? And the people, the things that really established New York as a cultural center seem to be forgotten and left up by the wayside. And that was before there was a health crisis. You know, when I was living there, it was before Obama and the Affordable Care Acts. So there was like and even that didn't change things too much for musicians getting healthcare. That just made you.
I trust that you've enjoyed the video so far. please subscribe, comment, share, like. And also, you can go over to my Patreon. The link is in the description if you'd like to further support. Thank you. Now back to the video.
It just made you have to pay for it. At the time I didn't have health insurance. I figured, well, I'll just take my chances because it's either pay rent or, pay your health insurance. And I thought I was young and healthy. I said, well, it's better to save that money and hopefully not have to use it than to spend whatever it is, the hundreds of dollars a month to have health insurance when you don't really have to go to the doctor. But that's a crazy situation to be in, I think. And there's lots of things like that. So obviously this situation has exacerbated all that. And now musicians who are already struggling to make ends meet, there's nothing for them. There's nothing. Nobody's looking out for them. You get no unemployment insurance when you're a freelancer. You get no, health insurance. Forget about it. You got to pay for it yourself. You get no retirement. You get no paid vacation. You get none of these things that anyone else with a normal job gets. Now, are musicians entitled to those things? Obviously there's lots of different philosophies on that. And just to bring this up, because I know, this is for musicians watching this, in France and in some other European countries, there's a system, like as a professional musician in France, I get, when I was working full-time as a professional musician, part of the money I was getting paid was going towards my retirement, was going towards paid vacation, was going toward, obviously my health care, my universal health care that everyone gets. So being a musician in France, it's like any other job. You get the same benefits as if you're a doctor or a teacher or anything else. You have it's a real job. You can't just say, I'm a musician, I want to get these things. You have to qualify by, and the way they measure whether you're a professional musician is how much paid on the books work you're doing. But once you qualify and you're doing that full time, you get access to the same things you would get if you were doing really any other legitimate work. And I think that's great.
Yeah, I mean, especially in a time like this, that sounds obviously superior.
Well, one of the things they did when this thing happened, obviously all musicians are out of work during the time when you're not allowed to work because of health regulations, what have you. Mm-hmm. So they extended. So this is a system that gets renewed each year. So each year, if you qualify because you've done a certain amount of professional work, it gets renewed, you stay in the system. And you get all those things, the health care, paid vacation, retirement, but you also get paid in months that you don't work. So for example, let's say here where I live, a lot of the work is in the summer for a lot of people. And you might work every day in the summer for a while, for a couple months. But then in certain months in the winter, you might not work very much. You might work once a week, and during those times you might have trouble getting by. So the system kind of you're going to be paying more into the system in the summertime, but in the times you're not working, the system is going to be giving you basically a paycheck.
Right.
For those lean months, so that everyone is able to make their bills and live comfortably. And, for artists, that allows you to do all the things that artists need to do, whereas, in the States, artists need to use their free time to work and make money when they could be composing or, doing things that artists do, creating art.
Yeah, this is kind of a crude example, but it sounds like it's kind of like going on for paying my gas bill, I can go on a budget. And so during the winter months when I'm using a lot more, I'm actually still, the rate that I'm paying is actually still the same. And in the summer when I'm not using very much, I'm still paying the same, but it evens out over the course of the year.
Right. That's basically the idea. The idea is put in place so that you can pay your rent even in a month that maybe you don't have any work.
Yeah.
And it's not just for musicians, the system. This system is for people that work in, like sound engineers, anybody who works in concerts, people that work in the movies and television. You might work every day for 6 months on a movie set. But then, your next job, you have a break of a couple months by your next job.
Right.
Well, what are you going to do?
Right.
Here there's a system set up so that that things can even out. And, and the other thing that they did when this COVID thing happened is they extended that system for an extra year for everyone. Meaning that you don't need to worry about, now that I'm not working, how am I going to qualify to continue being in the system next year? They just extended it for a year. So, and now we're already back to work. The musicians are already back to work here. And Netflix is filming shows and things. All these things are happening again.
Yeah. So. Another way it seems like you've sort of hedged against the effects of the economy and other things, and obviously the health crisis, is getting back to your full-time online teaching through Better Sax.
Yeah.
And that's how I found out about you. I'm always checking stuff out and seeing how other folks are doing some of the educational things. Now, like you, I've been a content creator for several years, but even prior to the pandemic and things. But the pandemic made it more possible for me to be more aggressive about things that I wanted to do. I mean, I had time to do, everybody's gigs, everything got canceled like overnight, and so one of the reasons that I'm interviewing you, that I'm doing this whole series of interviews, is because I thought to myself, well, what's a good way to use this time? A lot of musicians are out of work, people that I would enjoy having a conversation with, a way to sort of stay connected and reconnect with folks that I admire and respect, and have some conversations about music and about how people are being creative during this time. And one of the reasons that was particularly interested in interviewing you, I interviewed Yannick Guizdala and Rick Beato, just to name a couple, folks that are aggressive and have been aggressive content creators for a long time, because I want to sort of lean in on some things that musicians are doing, have been doing, and how they sort of set their stuff up to be able to sort of thrive even during this situation. So can you talk a little bit about how you got your how things developed? You said you've been doing this full time for 3 years. What were some things that happened prior to that, and how did you get things set up and established and all that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to that. So as I said before, living in France already gave me a lot more free time, because I wasn't doing multiple jobs at once in order to have a certain standard of living like I always had to do in the States. In the States, I was repairing saxophones, teaching like every day, and then doing the gigs on the weekends, like a lot of people are doing. And that was great, but I never had a day off. And I never said no to a gig, because that was just a luxury I never had. I just did everything I could and tried to save every penny, because you never know what's going to happen. And if something happens to you and you can't work, that would be a catastrophe. Like, what is going to happen? And as soon as, then being in France, it's like, well, if you get sick, you're okay. If, you're fine. It's not a catastrophe. You still get paid. You can go to the doctor. So all of a sudden, this huge weight is lifted off your shoulders, and you have this freedom to kind of, take risks with your finances, let's say. So when I had to, but at some point when I wanted to take this seriously, the content creation, I had to like quit all the bands I was working with and kind of stop doing everything else, because it was really it's an, I don't want to say all or nothing, but for me it was kind of like that. For me it was like, well, if I really want to do it, I've got to go all in to do it the way I want to do it. Because it is, as I'm sure you realize, it's very time consuming.
Oh yeah.
You know, and you kind of need to be focused. You know, if I had to leave and go to a gig later, you know, I mean, I need to, you never know how long it's going to take you to finish a piece of content. And I just wanted that to be my primary focus. So that I had to have the luxury to do that. And while I've told a lot of other people, friends and colleagues, oh yeah, it's great, you know, do a YouTube channel, do this, do that, I also understand that not everybody has that luxury at all. So while I do encourage people to do it, there is the thing, like you need to really enjoy it, because number one, it's going to take a lot of your time, and you might not make any money out of it. So, you know, so there's that.
Right. Yeah. So, okay. So talk about, just for folks that maybe aren't familiar with your site, can you talk about the variety of
Sure.
kinds of content that you provide? Well,
okay. So I actually you asked me about this earlier. I got into it because I was doing this gig, and there was for a week we were playing in the Bahamas, and there was this guy who was playing guitar just for that week. And I was talking to him, and he told me about his website that he had, teaching guitar, and you know, that's his full-time thing, and how great it was. And this is years ago. And I was like, oh, really? And I had so much experience teaching, and I thought, oh, you know, that's something maybe I should do, you know. And then it was just an idea I had in the back of my mind for years. And finally, I came up with a concept. And I said, you know, I'm going to do something that I think not a lot of people are doing. And it's create lessons for, you know, saxophone lessons for the majority of saxophone players, which are not professionals or even advanced students. They're people that love the instrument, love music, but they have normal lives. You know, they're not musicians per se. They're not professional musicians or hobbyists. And in my years of teaching, I came across a lot of these students, and the materials, all the educational materials, were always geared towards serious music students.
Right. And
those sort of people who are just music lovers and wanting to get into it always felt, you know, this isn't for me. Like, and the material is not getting me to the place I want to go. It's preparing me to play in the school band or improvise jazz on a sophisticated level, which, you know, if you follow what I mean. So I said, you know, I know what these people need and what they're really looking for and what they can't find in what's out there. And I created my first course, which is called the Pentatonic Foundation. And it's about learning how to play music by ear, learn melodies by ear, which for me is one of the most important skills I kind of learned outside of school. You know, when I was doing gigs and playing as a freelance musician, most of the time it was like, all right, we're going to play this tune, or, you know, and it was stuff I didn't know all the time. But maybe I had heard it before, but there's nothing written down, and it was just a tremendous amount of, you know, using your ears. And I thought, you know, and then in popular styles of music, most of that stuff, those melodies are very pentatonic based. Or I think of things like, well, it's basically pentatonic scale with, you know, a couple other notes mixed in there, you know, and so using that concept, I created a course about, you know, learning basic melodies, learning, you know, using your ear to play melodies, and then going to the next level and improvising, just to get people's feet wet, started that way. So you can get quick results, get quick satisfaction from playing the instrument without having to go through the, okay, now we're going to learn Mary Had a Little Lamb. Now you're going to learn hot cross buns. Now you're going to, that sort of typical thing that adults just, I'm like, I don't have the time for this. I want to get right into having fun with the saxophone. Get me, and that's not to say that there's shortcuts to playing music, but there's different approaches that get you more directly to where you want to go, especially if you're never going to play in the school band and you're probably never going to be improvising bebop. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah,
so that was like my core target audience. And I think that's probably why I've had success on YouTube, because there are a lot of those people, and they've been looking for material, and they look on YouTube, and a lot of the stuff out there goes way over their heads. Like,
Now, I noticed also that you do a lot of sort of product reviews.
Yeah.
So I saw you with like a Roland Aerophone, and I think you did one with like an Aerophone Go or something.
That was the not the Go, but their basic one. The one that's like
okay, right.
I forget the name.
Right. And mouthpieces and different horns and all that stuff. How does that work? I mean, are companies sending you stuff and then you review it and then you're sending it back, or how does that go?
It started out me doing, I was looking for doing different sort of content on YouTube. And one of the things I always do on YouTube is if I want to buy something, I do a lot of research, as everyone does. What do I want to buy? And I saw some people reviewing saxophone things. I had a lot of mouthpieces, a lot of gear, because it's something I've been doing my whole life, So I started out reviewing stuff that I've had for years and played on, and because it's the thing I get asked about the most. People are I get so many questions about gear. So I started making those videos, and they were very well received. Lots of people watched those videos. So I continued doing that. And once I got through all of the gear that I already owned, I had to start getting new stuff in. So sometimes, like the Aerophones, I bought them myself because Roland was not really bought. I sent them a message and said, would you be interested in sending me one? And I never got a response. So I just bought one myself. I'm glad I did. I see you've got one on your desk over there.
Yeah.
I think it's a great little tool. I've been using it in certain times. I'd much rather play a saxophone, of course, but it has its place. And I know for a lot of people, they desperately want to be able to play an instrument in an apartment or where they're not bothering anybody, and that's a great way to do it.
Yeah.
Now, I do receive a lot of stuff from once you start making videos about product reviews and you start getting tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of views, you're going to get people wanting to be on your channel. And I get contacted a lot. And most of them now, I don't even look at I don't even answer them because you get things that aren't even saxophone products, I've, over the last 2 years, I've kind of been in touch with all of the major mouthpiece makers and people who are making products. I've talked to them, and some of the things that I really like, they've sent me more things to review, like some mouthpieces. It's a mixture. Sometimes I get the things to play. Sometimes I buy them myself. Sometimes I buy them at a discount. It's a mix.
Right.
So
now,
with each company, it's a different deal.
Now I think one thing that you said that is, now I used it for a different purpose, but I used this sort of similar concept. That was, look around at the stuff that you already own, see if you can do some reviews and whatever on that stuff, and then sort of move on from there. That's what I did when I was, I mean, this is 20 years ago or something, when I was trying to get some endorsements from companies. I said, okay, well, what's the equipment that I already own? What's the stuff that I already have? And then I was like, okay, well, I've got this Yanagisawa saxophone. I got this, whatever it is. And then I reached out to those companies, says, hey, I have your instruments already. I'm just interested in maybe discussing some kind of endorsement arrangement. It doesn't really cost them anything, and if you have any name recognition at all, then it seems like a win-win to them. It also doesn't seem like you're just trying to get free stuff from them, and that you have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
And then once you actually get a couple of endorsements, then it's much easier to get further endorsements. When I remember getting some advice when I was a student, student in college, about endorsements, where the advice was basically, well, just kind of wait until, you have a name, and then, people will come to you. And yeah, I guess, if you're Herbie Hancock or something, I think that works. But if you're not Herbie Hancock, then I think most of the folks that I've found that, have some endorsement arrangements, they had to be aggressive about it. They had to, sort of play some politics, so to speak, to try to get things at least initially set up. Yeah. And then stuff like going to trade shows and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm just saying that to say that getting started doesn't necessarily have to be super expensive. Now, I'm kind of I'm a gear nerd. Obviously, I am, and it's like I can waste a lot of time just like it's like a lot of toys, right? I never grew out of that. I just my toys just got more sophisticated, and so when I decided, okay, I'm going to lean back in on the content creation thing, then I started nerding out again on like stuff like cameras and all of that kind of stuff. And then that's like a piece of the puzzle with that, since folks don't really see that's sort of, they're not thinking about it, but obviously that stuff is also critical to what it is that we're doing. So my question to you is, on the production side of this, how do you think about that, and how did that sort of evolve?
Well, that definitely evolved quite a bit, because, when I started, like the video you have up on the screen behind you was on an iPhone. I shot that on an iPhone. I did everything on an iPhone camera for the first couple of years. And then I started...
But it's great lighting, though. So you obviously had an idea of...
I got a lot of windows in that room.
Oh, okay, all right.
There was no lights. Except for that light in there.
Oh.
Yeah. Lighting is super important, but I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know it. Right. I learned all that stuff, and I learned it from watching YouTubers who specialize in that. I got the gear recommendation. I went through all of that stuff, and I learned how to use each tool in the arsenal kind of one by one, whether that's the software for editing or the lighting or the cameras or the microphones. And, there's a lot of pieces to that puzzle. And if that's the other thing about content creation, you have to do a lot of it to get good. And you just have to accept that in the beginning, it's going to suck. You're just it's like playing saxophone. In the beginning, you're not going to sound good, but you get better with all the wrong notes. So you got to get all the wrong notes out, and then it gradually improves over time. So a lot of people I find now trying to get in the game, the big mistake they make is, well, I can't publish a video because it doesn't look as good as the videos I'm seeing. And I tell them, listen, if you want to get into YouTube, make a video today and publish it before the end of the day. Yep. And this is how I actually started with YouTube. I went on, I was like, somebody said, oh, you should use YouTube to promote your course that I had already made. And I said, okay. I went to YouTube. I didn't even have a channel. I went there, created a channel, and I watched this video, and the guy was like, this is instructions on how to get good at YouTube. He was selling like a PDF for $20 or something like that, which I bought. I read the PDF, and the instructions were, make a YouTube video right now. And they laid out how to do it, write a script, practice the script, film it, post it, edit it, post it. Do it all in one day. And he's like, if you can't do that in one day, you're probably not going to be able to do YouTube and you should just give up. And the thing is, it's so true. And I tell the community, if you can't pull the trigger and just allow it, because first of all, you got 0 subscribers. No one's going to watch that video anyway. You have nothing to lose. You know what I mean? Make your first video. Nobody's going to watch it but your mom. You know what I mean? So and she's going to love it no matter what. So just make the first video, because if you can't do that, you're never going to, you have to. So make your bad videos when nobody's watching, so you learn, shed your YouTube chops for a while. And then, you'll learn how to make better and better content. And through that process, people will start watching you and paying attention,
Yeah, it's pretty organic because, like you said, I mean, when you first get started, you don't have any subscribers. So just, putting something out there, it's of such small effect, and so few people are probably going to go all the way back to the beginning of your catalog.
You can erase
and view stuff. And right. That is a good point.
Or hide them. You don't even have to erase them. You could just unlist them if you want to keep them there for whatever reason. And if you make something and later on you're embarrassed about it, you just you just hide it. That's fine. There's no reason not to make a video today.
Right. I was thinking about, so the way that I sort of, and this is, 13 years ago or something. So maybe 2006, around 2006, I think I got my YouTube thing, started making YouTube videos. And basically what it was is I was just videoing my lessons. And I started videoing lessons for a couple reasons. The lessons that I was doing at Ohio State where I teach. So there was 2 reasons. One was because, especially in that time, and still, there's a good reason to do it now also, is honestly I was trying to protect myself. Having footage of lessons, if someone was ever to decide that they just wanted to make some allegation or something, I can always say, check the tape. So that was a reason to do it. The main reason, though, I was doing it was because I wanted to become a better teacher. So I wanted to view back the footage and say, okay, well, I communicated that pretty well, but this other thing I didn't communicate very well. Let me see how I can improve that. And as I was reviewing things, I was like, man, well, this looks like maybe somebody else would be interested in this information, and so I started making like little 10-minute or less video clips and uploading them to YouTube, and I called it the lesson of the week. And I was doing that once a week. I was videoing every lesson, and then you get to the point where if you're videoing a lot, you'll start thinking, you know what, the lesson I had with Johnny, there was a couple things in there I think that I haven't talked about yet that I could just, clip that and use it. And it's strange because I didn't know if people would necessarily be that interested in that or not, but you know, I was like, hey, let me just put it out here. And the video quality is terrible, and like the audio is horrible. I mean, it's like you're looking at it and it's like, man, this stuff is so out of focus. I'm using like a cheap webcam, you know, and like the microphone array on the webcam to video. You can hear like air conditioner in the background. It's like, you know, you know, when you're talking, the volume of your talking is way less than the sound of the instrument, and I mean, you have all of those kind of issues, but still to this day, it's hard for me to go anywhere. I tour with the Count Basie Orchestra, and I was in what was it, Ronnie Scott's when was that? Was it this past summer? Maybe it was this past summer. I was at Ronnie Scott's, and a guy comes up to me. He says, "Hey, man, when are you going to start doing this lesson of the week videos again?" You know,
Yeah.
I got so much out of those. You know, and it's hard. I mean, I go to conferences, you know, like the OMEA conference or the GIN conferences or any of that kind of stuff, and people recognize me from those lesson videos. So it's amazing how just deciding, hey, I'm going to do this as a regular thing, and of course the videos have gotten a lot better, you know, and I've gotten a lot better at editing. You know, and the turnaround time of editing is a lot faster, you know. So yeah, it's just yeah, you just got to do it. Just start doing it and see what happens. One mistake that I've made personally, because I'm such a gear nerd, is sometimes I will feel like I have to have all the right gear first before I start doing something.
Yep.
And I've had to try to scale that back because, first of all, it's super expensive. And you don't even know if you're going to make any money doing it yet.
And sometimes you buy things and then you don't use it because it actually wasn't an improvement on what you already had, or it wasn't the right thing. I've got tons of stuff that I bought and never really used. And like I said, that video there, I don't know, that was at like 300,000 views. I made it with my phone. I have loads of videos that I made on the phone, and they got hundreds of thousands of views. It's great to have good gear, but you don't need the fancy stuff. You know, now I have all super fancy stuff, and I love it. It's great. But the thing is, before I even knew how to use it, there's no point. It's like having a professional saxophone when you're just starting out. It's great to have, but you're not going to really notice any difference. You can have the latest Canon camera, but if you don't know anything about, you know, taking pictures or making videos, it's not. You may as well use your phone, you know, because you're going to get basically the same results. So, and yeah, a lot of people that I've tried to help get their YouTube thing started, they're like, "Oh, which microphone should I buy?" I'm like, "Don't buy a microphone. Make a video first." They're like, "Yeah, but which light should I buy?" I'm like, "Don't buy any lights until you've already made it." If you can't make one video with your phone, you're wasting money buying lights. You know, that's what I tell people. Make a video on your phone first and then buy something, you know.
Is this an SM7B, this microphone you have?
No, this is a Rode NTG3.
Okay, I can only see the head of the mic. It has like the yeah. Oh, okay, yeah.
This is what I use for my voice when I do all my videos now, and I put it right here in front of me, just out of the shot.
Now, what kind of camera are you using?
I'm using the EOS, the Canon EOS R.
Oh yeah, that's a great camera. That's a full frame, isn't it?
It's a full frame, but it's not there's no mirror in it. So
mirrorless, yeah.
It's a mirrorless camera, and the quality is amazing. It's just I really enjoy using it for taking pictures, for making the videos, but it's super expensive. Wow, I consider it quite expensive. They can get more expensive than that, obviously, but you don't need that. You know, start with your phone, and then once your videos are making money and there's a justification for it, upgrade your gear. But otherwise, I could make a video tomorrow on my phone, and it would get the same amount of views as if I did it with the fancy gear. Really.
Yeah. So if you want to be serious about playing the saxophone, you need this ruby encrusted saxophone here. Now, I know you can't play yet, but trust me.
If you spend a lot of time practicing on a student instrument, you're going to be a bad player. You're going to be bad. You don't need to have, but you could buy the most expensive thing ever and never practice, and you're not going to be any good. So,
yeah, but you'll have the right look though, and that's yeah. So anyhow, yeah, it's a funny thing. I interviewed Nicholas Payton, and recently he put that Live at Massey Hall, the contract on his which is like very cool to see that, and unfortunately how little they got paid for that gig. But one of the stories that I tell my students frequently is that there were 2 dates, that Massey Hall gig. There were 2 dates. It was like a Friday and a Saturday, and on the Friday, which I think is the one that everyone, it's the greatest jazz concert of all times, heralded that way. Charlie Parker, we know he had a drug addiction, and he had hocked his horn, and he played that gig on a plastic saxophone. The one on Friday, the one everyone listens to. Right. And Parker's in rare form, and he's some of the greatest Parker ever. He's playing on the plastic saxophone, right? So after the first gig, he gets paid. He goes back to the shop. To the shop, and he gets his good horn. He plays that on the second gig, and the whole equipment, the whole equipment discussion, I think, is soundly settled right there. If this guy can sound this way on a plastic saxophone, and it wasn't the good plastic saxophone technology that we have now. This is the old plastic saxophone technology.
Well, I tell people that I think a good way to put it is that you are the instrument. The human is the instrument. You are the music maker, and the gear is like sort of like a bionic extension of you, the instrument. So it's nice when it's working really well and everything, but at the end of the day, the musician is the one making the music.
Oh. Yeah, I when I'm talking to my students about sound production on saxophone in particular, I talk about the 5 sort of components or attributes or things that facilitate the sound, and I always talk about them in reverse order of significance. So number 5 is the body of the saxophone. So the body of the saxophone is important because you want the holes to be cut in the right place. You want to have good key action. You don't want to have any leaks. You want it to be as in tune as a saxophone can be to itself. So that's 5. Number 4 is the neck. So the neck is exponentially more involved in tone production than the body of the saxophone. So stuff like taper, possibly the material that the neck is made out of, although there's some different sort of research on that may suggest that the only thing that really matters is the taper and the bore size. So that's number 4. Number 3 is the setup. So, mouthpiece, reed, ligature. Now, we could go all kind of crazy with that, but obviously that's more involved in tone production than the neck, which is more involved than the body of the saxophone. Number two is your anatomy, lung capacity, teeth shape, vowel sounds that you might use when you're playing, diaphragmatic strength, all of that kind of stuff. And then number one is the gray matter between your ears. And that overrides all of the rest of this stuff. It's more involved than all the rest of that stuff. And, I tell my students, it's always, saxophone players are always guilty of, or often guilty of having a huge box full of mouthpieces and sort of regularly sort of cycling back through them. And the reason for that is because you can get sort of an instant gratification, but it lasts for a short period of time, because what happens is the sound in your head starts to override whatever the mouthpiece is until it gets to the place where you sound the way that you perceive in your head. So the most effective and permanent way to change your sound is not by changing your equipment, it's by changing who you listen to.
Yeah.
If you can get somebody else's sound, a particular sound in your head, then that will educate the way that you approach the instrument altogether.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I try to convey that, even though I love doing like mouthpiece reviews, but I always mention this in every, and I try to tell people, listen, just because I sound the way I sound, because I sound the way I sound, and I might sound like me on every single mouthpiece, you might sound completely different, and somebody else is going to sound different. I try to present the mouthpiece as just to give people an idea. You can see it, you can kind of hear somebody else play it. But by no means, because one person sounds this way on that mouthpiece, you're going to sound the same way. It's about your tonal concept and all the other things that you mentioned. And the most important thing to remember is that you can't buy a good sound. That's not the sale.
That would be a lot more efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean to suggest that those factors, the saxophone, the neck, the setup, the kind of reed or the kind of mouthpiece or whatever, I'm not suggesting that stuff is of no value. If you have something that is fighting you, that is really fighting against you, then that can really make it for quite miserable experience in the practice room. One of your recent videos, I saw it on Instagram. You uploaded it yesterday. We were talking about saxophone maintenance.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about? Maybe you can just talk about the video.
Yeah, this is one. So, all right. So yesterday I went into the practice room like I try to do every day, and I got my horn out. This is a new Yanagisawa. I play Yanagisawa saxophones. I love them. This one new. I've had it for about almost 3 years now, I think. Again, if I'm counting right. Maybe it's 3 or 4 years. Anyway, I was playing it, and I bought this new. It worked great out of the box. I didn't even put a leak light down it for all this time. And yesterday, I had been noticing the last 2 practice sessions some leaks in the left hand. Where you start noticing that those left-hand leaks, because that's going to affect all the notes below. And there's a lot of connections with your A key, your B key. There's a lot of connections there, things that the timing has to be exactly right. And over time, the corks compress, the felts compress, the pads, things move because it's organic materials. And you need to make adjustments, even on the best setup saxophone that there is. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, it's time. And once I get into the practice room, I'm in like practice mode. I don't want to have to sit down and make adjustments. So I am guilty of, I'll do it another time. And I practice, and over time, the things deteriorate until I get to the point where I'm like, all right, I'm wasting my time practicing because, it's not working well enough. I need to increase the efficiency of my instrument. So yesterday I sat down, I did some basic, I spent probably about 30 minutes doing basic adjustments that any good repair technician can do for you. Everything is, all the pads, no pads need to be changed, nothing like that. Just adjusting the timing of the keys that close at the same time. And then I went back and played, and I improved the efficiency of everything. I don't know, 10, 15%, which is enormous on and practicing an instrument. And it just made me happier. It made my practice session and all the ones after it are going to go better. So I made that video to tell people, listen, don't, I can do my own repairs. I don't do it. I know about procrastination. Call your local repair technician now. If you haven't been there in the last 6 months or so, make an appointment. If you can do so safely with all of the COVID thing going on, then make an appointment and, have them look at your horn to make those little improvements, because they can probably use the work and you can probably use the improved efficiency of your instrument.
Yeah, I'm guilty of the same thing, and
we all are.
Yeah, what's funny is sometimes when you've waited like way too long to have your instrument serviced, then when it is serviced and it's working well again, at least sometimes I've had the experience where I'm like, man, I wish they would mess it up again, because you get so used to it functioning so terribly, and you started making all kinds of weird adjustments. So now it's like you're overplaying, you're overblowing certain things, and yeah. So doing it more often is better, because you never get to that place where you've like changed your style of playing to accommodate.
Yeah, I know, and I know all those things. Now, as a repair technician, I never let it get that bad. And for me, maybe I have a lower tolerance. I know I have a lower tolerance for imperfections in it than most people do, especially based on the horns. When pro players would come in to see me when I was fixing horns, I mean, it was often just like, what? Like, why don't you come in? And I would do, I would do repairs for the pro players, usually at a huge discount if they needed that or whatever, just because I enjoyed having those guys come in, chatting with them and, exchanging, information, whatever. There's really not a lot of excuse for not doing, and I know a lot of like pro players can get a good deal on repairs from their local repair technician if they need that. But it is a thing. It's a procrastination problem. And I have seen horns. I have seen guys play, you go to the show, go to the club and they're playing and they're just killing it. It just sounds so good. And then after the show, I talk to them and they're like, oh, I'm going to come by the shop tomorrow so you can look at it. They come by the next day and I'm just like, how did you play? Yeah. How is it possible? Defying the law of physics here.
That's right. Okay, so I told you I saw that video on Instagram, and it kind of makes me think about this whole sort of what the sort of ecosystem, having multiple social media platforms, so like YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and all the things, and having them sort of working together. And someone I think that has done a really great job of that, and this dude is a machine, is Yannick Gwizdala. And he started doing these videos, speaking of practicing, called The Practice Room. And they're on YouTube. But then I started noticing that he would take these short clips of those sessions and he put it on Instagram, and then he put it, he might put something on Twitter or whatever. And just the way that all that stuff worked together. Another buddy of mine, I went to college with him. His name is TK Coleman, and he he does the same thing where he's got all of these platforms and he's using them to, because sometimes people aren't going to watch a 10-minute video or whatever, they're, but they'll watch like a minute or something, and maybe they're not people that usually go over to YouTube to watch content, and really they just want to see it on Instagram. So my question to you is, how have you, and what's your sort of philosophy on managing the whole ecosystem kind of concept?
That's a great question. This is just based on my experience and what I found. But the way I look at it is my audience, I mainly just use YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. And there's three, although there's a lot of crossover, there's three very different audiences. The people that spend a lot of time on YouTube, that's kind of one cross section. The people that spend a lot of time on Instagram, it's another one. And the people spend a lot of time interacting on Facebook. Sometimes there's crossover, but just like with anything, we have our favorite platforms that we like to interact with and spend a lot of time on. So the content ideally needs to be tailored for each platform. So that video I put on Instagram yesterday, I would never put that on YouTube. Because on YouTube, I make long form content, 10 to 20 minute videos, because that's what the audience expects. They're going to YouTube to watch a long form, really well produced video. That's either going to be very informative or entertaining or a combination of those things. The other thing is with YouTube, your content is part of the search engine. It's stuff that people are going to be watching, hopefully, for years to come. If you've made quality content, I have that in mind when I make those videos. So I spend a lot of time on those YouTube videos. I try to do all the research necessary. I kind of plan them out very carefully, and I edit them very carefully. I spend sometimes days making each one of those videos. The thing I would do on Instagram is more of like a flavor, like, what's happening right now. So I made that video yesterday, and then we're talking about it today, and then tomorrow maybe I'll put another video up, and it's very in the moment. There's no way to go on Instagram and do a search for, saxophone repair videos and find, really like the same thing you'd get on YouTube of a really nicely curated list of things, as Google would put it out there for you. So, and with that in mind, it's not worth spending 3 days to make a video on Instagram for most content creators. So, right. Because it's there and then it's gone. Yes, of course, people can go through your feed and see that content, but Instagram is not showing that to people for more than a week after you posted it. It's swept under the rug, and they want what happened today. That's what Instagram wants. Yeah. Facebook is similar in that way. Facebook is very community oriented. People like to comment. The content I put on Facebook is less personalized, but more about the people that are on the platform. So it's a lot of like, what's your favorite saxophone player? Let's all discuss, that sort of thing people love on Facebook. And by making lots of content, you just see what works and what doesn't. I could put the same exact piece of content on Instagram and Facebook and get two completely different reactions. And all three platforms, each type of content is going to perform better in the different platforms. So ideally, you want to either tailor, take the same piece of content and modify it slightly to work in the different platforms, or just create, specialized content for each platform, ideally, if you can do that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, the only videos that are like super produced on like Instagram are like sponsored, like ads or something, that stuff will be produced well, but that's because they're trying to get you to buy something. Trying to take advantage of that whole less produced. So I mean, it's interesting how some of these viral videos how it works, because in many cases the viral video is totally not a produced video, totally raw, just like, you know, some spur of the moment, just something strange happened or whatever. And you know, there's no lower thirds or something in the video. There's none of that stuff. It's not, I mean, they just took it on their phone and, you know, upload it, and then, you know, 3 million views, you know, in a couple days or something. And that's, it's interesting. It's like it almost makes people feel like it's more honest or something. I don't know exactly. Like, it's more, like you're showing, it's a little more vulnerable or something. It's kind of strange.
That's one type of viral video. There are other content creators who know how to make viral videos. I don't know if you watch YouTubers who are not like music creators. So like if you take someone like Mr. Beast, you know Mr. Beast?
No, I'm not familiar with Mr. Beast.
Okay. Mr. Beast is a case study in creating content that goes viral every time. It's fascinating, and entertaining. And if you are a content creator, you have to watch people like that, because what it really comes down to, and this might sound very cynical, we're all actually when you want to get a large amount of people watching, you're creating content for algorithms, and hopefully that translates into quality content for humans. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you need to speak to the algorithm first in order to get that content in front of the eyes and ears of the humans. So it's, and a lot of people are trying to do this, some successfully, some unsuccessfully, and the algorithm is constantly changing. It's almost like an organic thing that is evolving, and it's very unpredictable. So what worked last month might not work at all. So that's why you don't know which is going to go viral. And, you know, and the algorithm, and it's all based on, you know, the eyeballs on the screen, how long people watch. Because while you're watching YouTube, the algorithm is watching you and deciding whether or not to show that content to other people based on how millions of people react to it. Or first hundreds, then thousands, and and it says this video results in people watching for a long time, which means they stay on the platform for a long time, which means they see more advertisements, which means we're going to keep showing it to more people. And as long as people keep watching it, we're going to keep showing it.
Oh.
And the thing is, what is popular on YouTube changes as well. So a video that went viral 5 years ago might not do anything today, because what they're used to seeing and what they like watching on YouTube has evolved. You know, so all of these things, it's very organic. It's like a very sophisticated organic algorithm that represents a large cross-section of humanity. You know what I mean?
Yeah, recreating. It's difficult because, you know, I've seen a variety of different videos that I would say are produced as well, that the information is clearly communicated, video quality is good, all of that, and they could almost be identical in all of the, you know, main attributes of the video. You know, what they're expressing is different, the content is different, and one will go 1 million views and the other one, you know, might get 500 views.
Yeah.
You know, and now I realize that part of that is the way that videos are named. There's a naming strategy. I know that some folks have. There's tagging. like in particular on YouTube, you can do up to 3 hashtags now, but then there's also this sort of tagging, and then there's these sites where you can actually search for a video and it'll actually tell you exactly what the tags are that people have in those videos. And I've seen all of these approaches where people will figure out videos that got a lot of views, and then they will try to do a similar video or on a similar or related topic and name it something related to try to take advantage of that. So my question to you is, how aware of that stuff are you when you're making these videos? And or is any of that kind of stuff that you're utilizing?
Yeah. Okay, great question again. I mean, most of this is about content creation, not so much about saxophone, but I'm okay with that because I've done a bunch of these sort of interviews the last few days and everybody was asking me about mouthpieces. So this is good to talk.
No. I'll ask you about mouthpieces next. No, it's just joking.
No, but it's fascinating. And I know, all right, first of all, this is only interested to people who are making content, so it's not, most people who watch my videos want to know about saxophone. They're not ever going to make content creation videos. I know that because I've made some videos about content creation. Nobody watches them. You know what I mean? Even though I think I had something I know a lot about now from my experience with it, it's more niche than saxophone. Okay, let's put it that way. And in the beginning, when I wanted to get good at this, I was watching all of the gurus about this on YouTube. And now I've realized when I still watch some of them, I get more views on my videos than those people who I kind of learned about how to get my videos watched more, get on their videos. So I'm like, that's odd. And maybe, I think that's just a niche thing. Maybe they are in a niche with lots of competition. I don't know. I don't do a lot of that stuff. The most important thing is, so what I said earlier about the algorithm is measuring the human interaction with your content. So you need to have an impact on a lot of humans for that to register with the algorithm. The problem is, the first step is getting your content in front of enough humans for there to be enough data for the algorithm to even care. Do you know what I mean? Like, you kind of got to get over this initial hump of non-existence before, and I don't really know how to do that. But so I think a part of it is luck. Part of it's just consistently creating good quality content over time. But once you kind of get over that, yes, the algorithm is going to put your content in front of people. That's the main, all of my views, like the 99% of the views are coming from YouTube saying, hey, Sean, you might like this video. Any videos of mine you have seen is because YouTube says, oh, he likes saxophone, he might like this. And you and everyone else. That's why you saw that video. It's not really anything I did. I just made the video. But if tomorrow YouTube says, you know what, we're not going to show Jay's videos to anyone anymore, it's over. No one watches another video ever again. So I am entirely, the whole existence of this depends on Google and the YouTube algorithm, and I'm at their entire mercy. So this is another thing for content creators. You can invest countless hours in becoming a content creator. At any moment, they can pull the rug out from under you and you're fired. And you have absolutely zero say in that. So and me coming from the freelance musician mindset, diversify, don't just be a content creator, have your other gigs going at the same time, because you never know. It can end like everything else. The content creation thing is great and it's fun and a lot of people are learning a lot about it, but I don't have confidence that it will still be a way for people to make a decent living in the future. If it is, great, but like everything else, somebody's going to find a way to ruin it. You know what I mean? For the people who have made a career, and there's literally millions of people who are making their living through content creation in all the different niches and all the different things. But one day, you know, Google and YouTube could just fire them all by changing the algorithm in a certain way, or, you know, even a darker thing. You know, look at China; they don't have Google. You know, so they can't watch it. That could happen in the United States. That can happen in Europe. You know, these things, even though we like to think that that's not going to happen, those things can happen. Look at some of the crazy stuff that's happening. If, you know, let's say Trump gets reelected and, you know, he gets in too much of a fight with Google or Facebook and he decides to somehow, you know, these sort of things can happen. So it's still kind of precarious, even when you've found success in that content creation. To answer your question before, you know, and I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but to answer your question, the most important things for me, determining whether my videos are successful or not, because I think the content on my videos are basically quite consistent. You know, I mean, I put the same effort into all of them. I never like mail it in. I'm always trying to do a really good quality thing. Some of them are successful, some of them are not. The most important factors, believe it or not, are the title and the thumbnail.
Yes, yeah. So who was it I was talking to? No, you know what? It was an interview I saw that Yannick Gwizdala did with Adam Neely. I don't know if you saw that interview, but it was a really good interview, because both of those guys, obviously they're great at content creation. It's visually very nice to look at, because I talked to Yannick and he told me the way that they filmed that was they did the interview on FaceTime, but then both of them videoed themselves in 4K, and then they shared the video, and then he reassembled the video. So then it's just like, it's sparkling. It's like almost unreal. I didn't see that one, but I saw another one that he did that way, and so I've seen that finished product when he does it that way, and it's great. Yeah. And so anyhow, but one thing that they talked about in that is they talked about thumbnails and something about a strategy used about making sure that you have the human face. Adam Neely in particular was talking about having the human face as part of the thumbnail, and there's just something about that makes people want to click it. You know, I've experimented somewhat with some thumbnails, and I'm still kind of working on figuring out what something should look like. But yeah, that's a. I mean, everybody, we're very visual, and there's yeah. Go ahead.
If as musicians, think about it. In the old days, when we used to go to record stores and buy albums, you know, and a lot of times, you know, when you're a kid, you don't know the contents of that. You didn't know what the songs. You had no idea what it sounded like. What are you basing? You know, what are we basing? Why are we buying this record instead of this one? It's because of the image a lot of times. You might not be aware of that, but that's what's happening. And that's why the album artwork was so important. And, you know, obviously the content of what's in there is the most important thing. But if nobody buys it in the first place, no one's going to discover what's inside. And that's really what it is with your YouTube videos. You got to get them to buy it in the first place, and that's the click. And then they're going to come back for more if it sounds great, you know, if the content is amazing. So
you were talking about how, you know, basically you were saying that stuff is kind of volatile. You don't know if you know, things are going to be the same, and so you need to diversify. You know, you need to have multiple things going on. And one thing that I've talked to my students about often is, you know, you need to do some teaching, some performing, and some composing. You know, and it's a skill set that if you have those things together, then even if you're in a situation where you don't have experience doing this specific thing, music related, you'll have enough, you'll have enough understanding, and you'll have the skills to be able to, be able to do that. And, I remember when before I took the job at Ohio State in 2004, I had 5 jobs. I applied for the thing at Ohio State. I had 5 jobs. I was teaching about 20 students, out of my house. Obviously I was a freelance musician, and I was, recording and composing music for my projects, and, doing all that kind of stuff, going to trade shows, all of that. I was a full-time orchestra director in one school district, and I had, benefits and insurance and all of that for that. I was a part-time band director in another school district. I'm not even sure that was legal, that state, because I was full-time, right? And then I was a band director at a church. And that was a part-time thing. So I had 5 jobs, and I was doing all of that stuff, and that's what it took. That's what you had to do. Now, is that the ideal scenario? Maybe it's not the ideal scenario, but it's a pretty common and realistic scenario if you're trying to make it as a musician. Yeah. If you're trying to make a living.
Something similar. And, especially if you don't, some guys, young cats, maybe like when I was in New York, I know there's a lot of young guys, and they'd live in an apartment in a certain neighborhood in Brooklyn with 6 roommates, and you could survive like that for a while. But if you want to have a car and, eat decent food and not have 6 roommates, and, if you want to have a certain standard of living, you're working 5 different jobs as a musician. That's typical,
Yeah. And those 5 jobs that was in the Midwest. That's where the cost of living was reasonable, let alone obviously trying to live out east or out west or something where it's just, can get like so expensive. But by having the skill sets that I have to be able to do those jobs, even if something fell off, say for instance, if all my students fell off, or if, I got laid off at the church gig, or, whatever happens, I still have enough stuff going on, and I can sort of repurpose and kind of patch things in, as opposed to if all of my eggs are in a particular basket, and then it's like, okay, well, they pull the rug out from under me. That's gone. Okay, now what do I do? One thing I'm concerned about with music school students, a lot of these programs around the country, is there's not a lot of time that's sort of devoted to really imparting real world kind of skills, or even the idea of like how to hustle a gig, how to actually get it going, get things moving, in your career. There's a lot of focus on learning how to play the instrument well, and, understanding the history and all of that. And all of that stuff is wonderful and beautiful. But when you get out in the real world, what's going to happen? I mean, how many flute players do we really need? How many, clarinetists, or how many trombonists, or saxophone players for that matter, do we really need, to fill the jobs that are actually out there?
It's interesting to hear you say that, because, you work at a university, so you're not worried about, for me, I don't work at a school, and I probably never will again. And I like to always teaching privately, but I always had issue working in institutions for the reasons that everybody, it's the same reasons everyone. Things like also what you mentioned.
Right.
and I'm going to talk about this, even though I know it's maybe the sort of a difficult conversation for people who are working in universities to kind of have. But I've always looked at this, and this is, I got a bachelor's and a master's degree in music, so I have certain experience with the system. I don't know what's the deal is. They're kind of, what are they selling? Because it's really expensive to get this degree. So what are you buying? What are you getting for the tens of thousands of dollars or more? What do you get for that? Are you getting something like and I've said this in videos before. Even if you went, I don't know how much is school, how much does it cost at Ohio State for tuition?
I'm supposed to know that. Goodness. You know what? Keep talking. I'll give you the number.
Well, whatever it is. No, when I went to state school too, and I think that's a great option for like most people because you get a great education and you're not, especially if you're going for music. I don't see the any reason, unless getting a full scholarship, I cannot see any justification for paying upwards of $50,000-$60,000 a year to go to any school for music. I think that's criminal to be asking for that money for preparation for a career that you will not even make that in a year typically, unless you especially just performance wise.
No.
Especially starting out, and the long term prospects for that are even worse when you consider that pay for musicians has just been going down. The same gigs I did 20 to 25 years ago pay the same in like dollar amount.
Yep.
They did.
That's right.
So, and this has been going on for decades. So how can you sell this education to somebody for a career that is not going to remunerate them, at any sort of level? You're putting people into debt.
Yeah.
I think it's extremely irresponsible and dishonest. As much as I enjoyed music school, and as much as I think it's wonderful the experience you get there, I cannot justify. I wouldn't be telling people go to school, especially nowadays when information is free. Before there was, you could go to the library and get a lot of information. You can get, but now, man, everything is free. So, how do you justify that? When is college tuition going to come down to a reasonable price? In other countries, it's free, by the way. It's
in-state tuition at Ohio State for 2020, 2021 for 1 year is $11,454.
Okay.
Out of state, so somebody coming from a state other than Ohio, it's $33,437 per year.
Yeah, and that's not including housing and food?
I think that rate actually includes everything. It says, wait a minute, so it's for residents. And it says tuitions and fees. Tuition and fees. So I doubt
that includes housing as well.
Probably not housing.
Your meal plan. I remember when I went to school, one of the things that they were like, oh, you have to get a meal plan. You have to live on campus, number one. It was the rule. You got to live on campus. Like, well, I can live wherever I want. Can I? No, you're a freshman. You got to live on campus. That's the rule. So you can charge me the price to live with the roommate you select. That's not fair. And that's not even capitalist. You know what I mean? Like, market's supposed to decide where,
That's right. Hey, what happened to the free market? That's right.
And then the food situation. You had to get the meal plan. And I was like, listen, your food is disgusting. I don't want to eat that food. And there was a minimum you had to, and at the time my girlfriend was a vegetarian. She's like, there's nothing for me to eat, but I have to get a meal plan that I'm never going to spend, so there's all these things. This is a long time ago, but I don't know. I mean, I'm sure a lot of that stuff is still going on. And
well, I have tenure, so I can have these conversations. But I think, well, first of all, I think that the trade school route is a much more efficient, way to go about it. And there are basically sort of some trade school kind of options for music school. Like there's some of these music institutes where you go there and you just focus on, like, you spend like 1 year, you get to take lessons from whatever big name you want to or whatever for the year. And they kind of give you some general some general music education kind of stuff. But I think to your point about information being free, one of the things that colleges and universities say all the time is, it's about broadening your mind and how much is that actually worth and all of that. And yes, information is free, but I would say that knowing what information to listen to, I think that's actually what you're buying. There's knowledge and there's wisdom, right? So, there's so much knowledge. The other issue that I think that especially people that are of the age that they would be going to school now, I'm 45. So I think this probably started maybe for everyone that's in their mid 30s and younger, maybe, but there is less sort of appreciation of the information that's out there because it's free. So for me, I remember having to actually go purchase stuff, and I remember when it wasn't so readily available to find all this information. And so for someone like me, having it free, I've already established a value of it. And so when I find information, even if it's free, I can value it and I can actually treat it like it cost something. I think when stuff is just so readily available, I think that since there's no skin in the game, I think in general people don't really get the full value out of it because they don't treat it like it's that valuable. And so I think it benefits, like you and I think that it benefits us that we can find like any concert that we ever wanted to watch, or any information on any kind of thing for anywhere from about some camera that we want to a mouthpiece or a different kind of reed or a particular improvisation concept. All that stuff, being able to find that stuff for free is very cool for us. I actually almost think that it's debilitating for people that are younger than a certain age because they never develop that value of that information. Now, that's not me excusing the tuition that cost, the tuition cost, or the fact that I think that most schools of music and conservatories do a really poor job of actually training the kids for the actual music industry, because many of them have been in an academic bubble that prevented them from having to interface with the actual music industry. For years, 30 years, 40 years, whatever,
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things I would answer. First of all, like when I was a kid, and I'm 45 as well, we're the exact same age. So when I was a kid, I went to the public library every week, religiously with my mom, and what she was like looking at books. She's a vociferous reader. I would be, when I got into music, I would just be getting the CDs and I'd be like, how many CDs am I allowed to take out this week? And I'd get, and they were free, and I would listen to them. And then when they had when you could copy CDs, when that came out, what did I do? I copied the ones I liked and I kept them,
Right.
So it was free. It didn't make me appreciate that music any less. I had to do a little bit of work, I had to go to the library, but I still think even finding the right YouTube video, whatever, there's, you're doing something, you're searching out that information and you at least feel like you found it. Okay. Yeah. Whether it's free or you paid for it. Of course, I also bought a lot of CDs. That's what I spent all my money on, was CDs, right? Right. Some of them I listened to and wore them out. Some of them, And even though I spent the $18 on it, whatever, I was like, it didn't become something I listened to hundreds of times. So, and besides that, this is the way it is from now on. Information is free from now and for eternity. So we have to adjust to that new reality. Universities are going to go out of business if they don't adjust to that new reality, I think. They have to change their model to reflect, reality.
Yeah.
And then the other thing you said, about not preparing people for a career as a professional musician. I got my degree in performance, and the thing is, I learned everything about performance on the bandstand. You know what I mean? When I went out after having my degree, when I went out and started working, first of all, I got started working because my teacher, who was one of the top working musicians in the area, just sent me on gigs. And the first time he just called me up and he said, this is Mark. Do you have a tuxedo? And I'm like, yeah. And I had a tuxedo because I needed it for my concerts at school, And he's like, okay, write this down. And he gave me address. Okay, Saturday at this time, be there, wear your tuxedo, don't be late or I'll kill you, And then he hangs up. And I'm like, well, wait, what do I have to play? What music? It's standard repertoire, And I showed up at this gig, and it was in New York, in Little Italy. It's like a wedding, club day gig. And I knew nothing, I didn't know any of the, I was a kid. I didn't even graduate school yet. I was like 18 years old. I didn't know all the disco tunes and all that. I mean, I didn't know all that stuff, all the pop tunes over the time. I didn't know any of that. And I got there, and the other musicians were all killing New York musicians. And they were like, oh, don't worry, you're going to learn it all on the bandstand. That's where you learn it. And they just listen, after the gig, go back, make a note of what you didn't know and learn it for next time. You know what I mean? And that was the process. And nothing I did in school prepared me for any of it, really. Right. Except for I knew how to technically make sounds on the instrument, but that wasn't really the job. And most of the job and the way I had success as a professional musician was a lot of networking, a lot of dealing with people, just, being a person, communicating, being likable, being nice to people, saying the right thing, just basic human skills go further than, and this is something that I noticed as you notice in professional music circles, a lot of complaints about certain musicians. It's like, the guy plays so great, but man, don't want him on a gig. I'm sure you've heard a lot of that.
Of course, yeah.
And then you have friends. I got friends, but man, nobody ever calls me for gigs. You know what I mean? You know those guys, right?
That's right.
Players, nobody calls me for gigs. Like, man, maybe, it's the things you say and the things you do. Maybe it's because you're always showing up late, or you're not wearing the right thing that they asked you to wear, or, you giving the vibes to people. Like, maybe if you didn't do those things, you'd have more work. Yeah. It's not just about how you play.
Absolutely. Now, man, we could keep talking. I feel like there's like 1,000 more topics that we could cover, but in the interest of time, do you have something that you'd like to plug, and or can you give us a final word? Well,
in general, I have my YouTube channel. On LinkedIn, my YouTube channel below are my free courses for anybody who's like starting out playing the saxophone. If you haven't gone through my free courses, that's a great place to start to get an idea of what I offer. And then I've got all my courses on bettersax.com. And the final word is, well, I just talk so much about all the same things, on YouTube, but I just hope that the world kind of gets used to this new sort of availability of information, whether it be for saxophone or anything else. And that contributes to a real positive, takes things in a positive direction. And then, of course, in this time of the COVID crisis. I've noticed a lot more people are getting into music because they need something to fill their time with. And again, go to YouTube. There's lots of resources there. It's like your big, huge public library. It's open 24 hours a day,
Yeah. Well, God bless you and your family, and thanks so much for all that you're doing to spread the word, about the saxophone.
Well, it's my great pleasure, and thanks for inviting me on the show.
Yeah, you got it, man.
All right, take care, Sean.
All right, you have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.